Surviving Reality contains explicit content full of snark and sarcasm that may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Hello and welcome to Surviving Reality.
I'm Corey.
And I'm Carly, and we are on Season 3, Episode 9 of The Traitors, The Silent Assassin.
Silent but deadly.
As soon as I saw the name of this episode, I got concerned.
The writing was on the wall.
Yeah, because we have heard Danielle refer to herself as a silent assassin in the past, that that's how she was going to get rid of Boston Rob.
Well, I think that sometimes they use that poetically if maybe that was something that would have befallen Danielle, and then they're mocking her by calling the episode The Silent Assassin.
I just didn't like seeing the phrase come up again.
Very scary, yeah. There's implications attached to it.
Well, the description for this one is, the traitors reach a stalemate in the tower, while the faithfuls are challenged to think like a traitor during the mission. A rivalry comes to a head at the round table, and someone has brought receipts.
It's not Robin Brown, somehow, surprisingly.
She has many receipts.
She has a lot, but yeah, she didn't bring them.
Where we left off last time was there was a standoff taking place in the turret between Danielle and Carolyn. Danielle wanted to recruit. She wanted to recruit Brittany, which still seems like one of the dumbest suggestions that you could possibly make to the other traitor. And Carolyn was saying, we're not doing that. I think we should murder someone instead.
I think I went into great detail about all the reasons why it would be really dumb to recruit someone right now at this point in the game, especially if you're trying to recruit a friend that you want to get to the end of the game with. That's not how this works at this point. If you're going to recruit a traitor, it's somebody that you need to throw under the bus. If Danielle is recruiting a friend, that means that Carolyn is going to get thrown under the bus. So I think Carolyn was smart enough to realize that's what the play is here for Danielle. So we need to murder somebody, not recruit.
Yeah, and the other concerning part of that is that obviously Danielle wants to share the money with Brittany. She doesn't want to share the money with you, Carolyn. So I'm happy that Carolyn was able to hold out. Like, they're up there at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. They're exhausted. Apparently, they also had to answer some questions for the challenge that they're going to do.
Yeah, they looked tired when they were answering those questions because it had to take place after they made their decision here in the turret.
That would be my downfall as a traitor, because there's no way that I could stay up until the wee hours of the morning and then go to breakfast and function totally normally.
You're not a night owl in that way.
I'm not.
No.
I would be a very bad traitor. The next morning, forget it. I'd be nasty to people.
It is a social game. People forget that.
Well, we get to breakfast. We don't know what the decision was yet. Other than that, they've decided to murder, but we don't see them debate who it is that they're going to get rid of. Gabby.
They threw out some pretty dumb ideas, too, initially. I mean, they went through same train of thought as me in a similar path there, where it was like, maybe Dolores, maybe Dylan.
Did they just name everybody? Except for Brittany, of course.
Yeah, not Brittany. Brittany's friend. And we can't do that.
Well, the first ones into breakfast are Gabby and Carolyn. And the conversation is already starting bright and early that there's something up with Danielle.
The suspicion around Danielle is reaching critical levels.
And it's not Carolyn who's bringing it up.
No.
This time, Gabby is the one who says that she thinks that there's something a little strange about Danielle.
But what I do love in this episode is that there's so many people bringing up Danielle's name to Carolyn, and you just get to see her eyes darting around the room, even though there's nobody else in the room with her. And like she's looking for a second opinion, but she can't get one anywhere.
I don't think she's doing very well in the one-on-one conversations.
Not so great, but I do love to watch it.
Tom is one of the next people in the room. He's shocked that he's here. Not as shocked as he was the morning before. I think he really thinks that the doll challenge helped him to see another day.
That must have been it. Yeah, hitting those notes. Even though every time the faithful group in the house was picking up the phone, they were like, please don't have Tom sing again.
You know, the traitors are just thinking, what if there's another musical challenge before the end of this and we've eliminated Tom?
Then we're really going to be up a creek without a paddle.
going to be screwed. We won't win any money. We got to keep him around.
What if the final challenge, you have to do a cover version of Aha's Take on Me, and that is it. Just start to finish. You have to know all the words, recite them from memory. Tom was made for that challenge.
Did you see any of the interviews with Brittany and Carolyn?
Where Brittany was saying that she sang a bunch of them too, but they just cut around that.
Yeah, but she also mentioned that whenever they're in the cars going to and leaving the challenges, that Tom was requesting to play his band's music.
Which makes absolute sense. Total sense. Yeah, I could see it.
Oh my God. Well, we end up finding out that it's coming down to Sam or Dylan. They're the last ones to enter the room at breakfast. Are we surprised so far just by it coming down to the two of them?
Look, Dolores was in the running. And if you were going to murder anybody in this house, if you're murdering a woman at this point, terrible decision to do that.
Well, I'm concerned that it didn't seem like their rationale had anything to do with the prevalent theory that came up at the round table that it was a woman or women who are the traitors and not any of the guys.
The lady traitor is sticking around. And yeah, the big issue with that is now you have the men who would be banding together to then just vote out the remaining women and finish the game as faithfuls.
They're not seeing that.
They did not. No, and I don't think Danielle's clocking that at all as an option that could become a reality here very soon.
Dylan walks in and everyone is shocked, including Dylan.
Dylan's surprised. He's also surprised that he's the last person in. So that means that he was considered. Do you think that's an element of the game that they take into consideration too? Is that if you're the last person who's walking in, you were basically up for discussion of murder, essentially?
I'm not sure if anybody really clocks that.
But it seems
Is
to
it
be...
always the case?
That seems to be very consistent, where it's whoever it's down to the last 2 or 3 names, whatever the group is that walks in, you were on the chopping block, basically.
Yeah, I think earlier in the game that's not as true because there's so many people who have to enter the breakfast room. But now at the end, you got to be a little worried. But it's odd, isn't it, that Dylan has been such an important player in this game, and he's still here. He seems like a bigger threat than Sam, who is the one that has been eliminated.
Dylan's starting to rethink the game, and at this point, you pretty much have to, especially as a faithful, where he's reconsidering now, maybe I've made it this far and I haven't been murdered because I'm not a threat to the traitors, and the people that I trust the most in this game are actually protecting me and carrying me to the end as a faithful to finish the game with.
Is he like the luckiest faithful to ever play this game? Because multiple traitors have tried to bring him to the end with them.
He was in with Rob very early. I thought that was where they were going to murder Dylan because he was so in with Rob that they didn't have a way in. But I guess Carolyn has kind of a connection point with him because we see that a little bit more on display here. He's referring to Danielle as the person he trusts the most in the house, while he is simultaneously thinking, I think she's a traitor at this point.
He's able to do what Pete the pilot was not successful at in his season, where you're figuring out who the traitors most likely are, but not being vocal about it so that you aren't becoming a blip on their radar as someone to come after. He's not really spreading names around.
Okay, so here's where that gets dangerous, because then what happens is if you are a faithful who you are not throwing people's names out, you're not going through that process throughout the game, and then when you get to the end, you want to start voting people off and keep voting people out, that then can look suspicious and people can flip and turn on you.
I'm just very fascinated by the game that he's playing because one minute we can't tell if he really knows what's going on, and now it's become increasingly obvious that he's just been keeping that on the DL, but then he seems to have really good relationships with people in the house, and no one suspects that he's a traitor.
I guess it depends on who he's in alignment with most that day, because if he's talking to Carolyn, he's scattered. He's all over the place. If he's talking to Danielle, he kind of knows what's going on, but he's making stupid decisions. So it's just his game mirrors the game of the people around him. in those ways.
Do we want to mourn Sam at all? I mean, I kind of forgot by the end of the episode that we were even missing someone at the round table.
It was amazing that he made it this far. And then the one episode where he speaks up, he gets some airtime, he leads a conversation at the round table, and then whoosh, we're done with you. You're out.
Yeah, and he had that theory of figuring out like who possibly saw the traitors by asking them questions about what Alan was wearing. That was his contribution to the entire season.
But then he didn't execute it well, so it didn't work out.
No.
I feel like he was the last person who was really dialed in on the coffin theory and pushing for the coffin theory, and that was why they kept him around. And then once that's done, your usefulness has expired. You're done.
Yeah. I was surprised by how complimentary everybody was of him at breakfast when they realized that he had been murdered. We didn't see much of him at all. Seemed like he didn't have a personality. He was just kind of present, breathing.
I don't have a way of caring about this in the way that the people in the house do, I guess, because that wasn't something that was shared with me.
So I guess they thought that he was becoming more of a threat now that he started to clock in and start playing the game. But I still would have gotten rid of Ivar. And I said that before we watched the rest of the episode. And I think Boston Rob made the point to everyone a couple of weeks back, which is everyone is convinced that Ivar is a faithful. No one is ever going to banish him from the game. So why are you keeping him around?
Because he's not really with it.
No, he is, though.
No, I think you can tell a lot of times he doesn't really pick up on things. And he's just kind of coasting along. But then we both clocked it where he's a threat in the sense of if he does get going on something, he won't let it go.
Yes, and he speaks up at the round table.
And obviously he's stirring some shit too, because there's a couple of points, a few different conversations that happen on like the in-between inner workings of what's going on for the day between the missions, between the round table and stuff like that, where he's checking in with people and kind of starting some shit.
Well, do you want to move to after breakfast? I mean, they find out they have to do a challenge. They don't really know what it's going to be yet. Tom is trying to read very deep into everything that Alan says, latching on to the most irrelevant words of the entire sentence, which seems to be an ongoing pattern.
Yeah, he still hasn't picked up on the important ones.
Is it weird that I'm starting to root for Tom?
I feel like a lot of people are. And I mean, like, some of us have been for a while.
I don't think there's any chance that he gets to the end and he correctly either continues to keep playing the game or chooses to end it when it needs to be ended.
Here's the plot twist. The only two people remaining at the end are Tom and Dolores. They're the only ones who choose to end the game together.
Okay, that is my new hope. That they don't even know how they ended up in the final together.
They have no idea how they got here. They still don't know if they can trust each other. Tom's still questioning if he's a traitor.
I am wondering if that is a strategy. I don't think Tom is smart enough to have that be what he's doing, but I am wondering if Dolores is intentionally always voting for Tom so that no one has a reason to come after her. Because she doesn't really vote for anyone else at the round table.
Yeah, you have them dialed in. They're both so far off. It looks like traitors who are not wanting to be involved in faithful mess, though, is kind of what it ends up looking like, too. So it's almost like a double bluff, where then you have these two people who are so locked in and against each other that it almost feels put on.
That almost feels like a genius strategy. Like that way, it's never gaining any support. No one goes, oh, you know what? I think I'm going to vote with Dolores for Tom this week, or vice versa. That might be a strategy that future traders want to explore.
To just be locked in on each other with absolutely nothing to go off of and just come off in that way. Usually the people that get recruited as traders, though, they don't have the ability to do that. Like Carolyn is kind of our wild card, sort of. You can't clock the methodology. It's the chaos that she embodies. But then Danielle isn't that. Danielle's just like misfire after misfire, misplay after misplay, more so than anything. But man, she's really patting herself on the back this episode.
Yeah, she is. She thinks that she is playing the best game that has ever happened in the history of Traitors. And here we are after breakfast, and her name is being spread all over the house.
Everybody's talking about Danielle. Everybody has suspicions about Danielle. Nobody likes you, Danielle. Everyone thinks you're a traitor.
In the words of the late
great Phaedra.
Dylan is looking Danielle's direction now because he's wondering, how the hell am I still here? It has to mean that somebody is dragging me to the finals with them. And perhaps it's Danielle. And he talks to Gabby, who has not been a confidant of his up until now.
No, but I like that this is basically the point that Dylan is at, where he has to reanalyze what is going on here. The people who I thought were traitors, maybe I'm not looking at this correctly.
This is the difference between a Dylan and a Tom. A Tom who will never change his mind about Dolores.
Tom is dialed in, and he's not letting go of that theory at all. And I'm sure if Ivar was convinced about somebody like Dolores, like Tom is, then he would be doing the exact same thing. So we're seeing kind of a shared mentality amongst the remaining faithfuls, but this is why you needed to get rid of Dylan with Rob. He has too much logic, too much reason. This is why it's dangerous to have Gabby as your close faithful who trusts you so much, Carolyn, because Gabby can be swayed by logic and reason.
Those are things we've pointed out about these players in the past.
Things to keep an eye on, things to be aware of.
So Gabby and Dylan, pretty sure Danielle is a traitor. Dylan then brings that information to Carolyn, and she sees an opportunity.
And her eyes are darting around.
She looks frightened.
She's always scared because I think she's afraid to go after Danielle, but it's like, dude, there's no other time. You got to do it.
Well, she already tried, and they're very lucky that everyone seemed to forget about that.
Somehow, except Tom. Tom remembered for a second and then forgot it again. So Tom's the only person in the house who forgot that encounter twice.
And it was so important.
It was very, very vital.
So she does say to Dylan, look, if I go for Danielle at the round table, are you going to back me? Which I don't know why it's Carolyn's job to do this. I think I would have talked someone else into being the one to lead the conversation.
Yeah, maybe Gabby or somebody. Yeah, like Carolyn needed to use a shield to bring this up because you can't bring it up.
And then why not chime in and say, I told you guys weeks ago that I thought that there was something going on with Danielle and no one listened to me. That will play into the challenge.
You can pile on.
I think I just came up with a better defense than she did.
Yep. Well, I think that's the problem with Carolyn. You needed to be thinking of your defense and your case over the past few days because you guys kind of dropped it and moved on. You needed to keep thinking about that. And I feel like she just let it go and moved on and then was kind of blindsided again, even though you knew we were going to have to come back to this at some point.
To her point about her personality, she is very impulsive and she knows that. That's so different from like Boston Rob, who I think every move he made, he was figuring out how he was going to defend that move. He had a plan. Whether or not you think it was a good plan, he did have an answer to everything that he did.
It kept working. And it would throw suspicion on someone else entirely, not him. And then you'd be looking over there, a complete misdirection.
So even though everyone's saying Danielle's name,
Brittany's not.
And they're not sure if they have enough votes to actually gun for her at the round table. Now, Brittany and Danielle are playing their own game by themselves, where it's just the two of them. And somehow that logic is going to get them to vote out whoever it is that they want. I don't understand. They don't have the numbers. But they're agreeing with each other that they need to get out the person that they trust the least, which is Carolyn. And I'm not sure why Brittany thinks Carolyn is someone that she can't trust.
Well, at that point, they didn't say Carolyn. Brittany was just saying we need to vote out who we trust the least.
And then she did say Carolyn's name.
She did say Carolyn's name? Oh, my
Yeah.
God. So I think, because she was saying, do we go after Carolyn? Right. Okay.
Well, so I guess that could be a highly edited conversation of maybe because everyone has had to talk Danielle through whatever it is she's trying to do. Maybe she was saying, Carolyn, we should vote for the person that we trust the least, if she didn't think that maybe Carolyn was the right direction to go. But Danielle's not going to be swayed. We're going after Carolyn.
And I mean, I guess all Danielle needed to say was that she's been saying my name. It's still this, contention between us that's lingering here that needs to be addressed.
Trying to remember who was saying Brittany's name. I know Sierra's gone.
Derek was very adamant about Brittany.
So everybody who's been coming for Brittany is gone at this point.
Yeah, because then that became a trend where it was people who were saying Brittany were getting murdered. And that was only adding more suspicion to Brittany.
Because if I were her, I would be questioning, why are we going after Carolyn if there are people here who have been saying my name? Anyway, let's move on to the chess challenge. They go out to a field. There is what appears to be a chessboard with their names on some of the spots.
The spots, yeah, that is the official term.
I'm not going to be the one to talk us through this. You know what I will tell you about Alan's fabulous headband?
Oh, yeah.
With all of the chess pieces.
Yes, very much so. Well, see, I was immediately thinking about Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone.
Does everything come back to Harry Potter?
Was it Sorcerer's Stone? Yeah, right?
I don't know. I'm also not a Harry Potter expert.
It's the first one. With the, wizard's chess down in the basement of Hogwarts.
I'm sure it's the first thing Tom thought of.
It had to have been, right? This is a Tom Riddle sort of chess, wizard's chess. I make my move, and you're free to check the king.
Was that Harry Potter or Ivar?
That was Ron.
Or Iva.
Iva.
Why are they still calling him that?
Because they don't have subtitles.
Is that what they need?
Yeah.
Do they not give anyone a sheet with people's names in this game? Because nobody can spell nor pronounce a lot of the names. It's just like Poverty, where nobody could say her name either.
Nobody likes your poverty.
Poverty. Yeah. Even another traitor didn't bother to learn her fucking name.
Yeah, I think that's the real kick in the pants if you're getting voted out and people are spelling your name wrong.
It would upset me.
Because I think Sierra...
Especially when you get to the end.
Yeah,
it's
that
like,
was a rough one.
guys, you still haven't learned how to write my name? Okay.
It's brutal.
The twist in this game is they're going to be answering a series of questions. And the answers have come from the traitors. So they have to think like a traitor. Or like who they think the traitors are.
And also the twist is that the traitors are obviously amongst you here as faithfuls, presenting as faithfuls. And that means that they will be trying to steer an answer because they know what the right answer is, potentially.
And they want to win that money.
They want some money here. They don't want it to go to waste.
No shield. They didn't even address it. There's no shield in this challenge. We are so far through the game at this point that there's no safety anymore. We have some surprise guests who we've been waiting on all season to show up.
Because they showed the shot of this in the trailer for the season here at the very beginning. So it was like, when is this ever going to show up? Now we know.
We have Kate and Parvati dressed in full costume.
Yeah, they were all decked out.
Which seems like a fun part about being invited back. Not to play, but to be a guest, is that you get to have a costume like Alan.
And they did some hosting sort of responsibilities as well, where they're introducing the chess pieces and then explaining what the question was that the traitors were asked last night. So they are taking some of those responsibilities for the challenge as well.
Yes, but my favorite part about it was having them sit off to the side and observe everyone, because they have not been part of this game at all, and yet immediately they suspect Carolyn is a traitor.
And they knew right away that Dylan is this season's Peter, Pilot Peter.
Pete the pilot.
Pete the pilot from The Bachelor, with just the goody two-shoes of the group.
I was like, get them back in the game. They're too advanced now.
They know what's going on.
Is there going to be like an all-stars season? Because
that'd be good.
We need them back. Boston Rob, some of the other game players who got voted out early. We need everybody whose spidey senses are always activated.
Yeah, I think Kate is used to being dropped in on stuff because She got dropped in the middle of season 2 and just had to figure stuff out. And she did pretty quick.
She did not do well voting at the round table, the first one that she was at.
Yeah, not great. She just went with the group.
Well, our first question is, who is slithering under the radar? And the chess piece is a snake. This one was kind of a softball because they literally had a quote from Sierra at the round table the night before where she said Brittany was slithering under the radar.
She's, flying under the radar. She's keeping a low profile, and that seems to be the strategy here. So Danielle was very quick to point that out. Carolyn agrees. Yes, let's pick Brittany.
Already questioning the strategy going into this because why are you leading anyone to the answers? Just shut up.
The names that were initially coming up weren't correct because I think somebody had said Ivar. I think Gabby said Ivar. And then Danielle was like, well, maybe we should think about things that have happened recently. And Dylan's looking over and is like, yeah, maybe.
Dylan took the strategy that the Traitors should have, which was to shut up and sit back.
Don't say anything.
And just observe. And so that's what he's doing. He's usually someone to speak up and volunteer answers, but instead he's just watching who's got a big mouth this time around.
Well, also it's dangerous to advocate for something, for somebody to be in an answer, because then it appears that you know what the answer is, especially if it ends up being right.
Mm-hmm.
That looks suspicious. And then if it's wrong, then you got money that you missed out on. So it's a lose-lose.
Okay, the money, it's $20,000 that's at stake in this entire game.
It's $5,000 per question, 4 questions. And so you can get some right, get some wrong.
Corey, $20,000. To me, I don't care if they get them all wrong. That's not worth potentially having people figure out I'm the traitor and having zero chance of winning any money.
Because this ends up being an interesting test. It's like a litmus test for the traitors of, do they know what the general house consensus is? Do they know what the group is thinking? Or are they answering as personal individuals, as traitors? Are the answers giving things away? Or do they have a pretty good read on what the general consensus is going to be?
Well, they do ultimately decide that Brittany must be the answer given recent events. And there's a giant traitor-shaped chess piece that I guess is attached to a Roomba.
Yeah. It just kind of meanders about on the board.
It's frightening because it's so much bigger than everyone else. And it seems like a little out of control. Like it moves up and down the board and just turns different directions until it's eventually aligned with the correct answer.
Yeah, I don't think those are standard legal moves that can be done by any piece, if we're being honest.
And then it just plows into whatever is in the spot that's correct.
Which is good. Yeah, you hope it lands in front of the chess piece that we've placed on the board, given the answer that we provided. But sometimes, like on the second one, the next question is,
who's the biggest threat? It's the skull piece that they've put on the board.
Skull.
Who's the biggest threat to the traitors specifically? And of course, Tom believes within his heart that it is him.
Because he's the biggest threat to Dolores. So that's why.
He's the only one saying her name.
He's feeling that conviction, very much so. Somehow, the traitors landed on their answer that they gave was Brittany. Again, because I think we're just asking Danielle, and that's the name that comes to mind for her for everything.
She thought she ate with this answer. She was like, Brittany would never suspect that I would say her name as the biggest threat because I'm her biggest ally. So that's why I put her name out there. And I'm thinking it's a miracle that if you get to the round table later today, nobody says Brittany's name.
Because, yeah, the general consensus of the house, nobody thinks that Brittany is a threat to the traitors at all.
Also, how is she simultaneously slithering under the radar and the greatest threat to the traitors?
The most obvious apparent threat that everyone will agree upon. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. So that was overtly Danielle trying to cover her tracks, but she's really impressed with how well this looks for her. Just solidifying that relationship between her and Brittany.
Did they get this one wrong? I can't remember.
Oh, they got it wrong.
Because
Yeah.
Tom
It was
insists
Tom.
that it's himself.
Tom was all on board that it was him, and it clearly was not him. It was Brittany because the Traitors picked who that was. Way off.
It doesn't get better from here. They put a chess piece out that is a wolf.
It's a wolf.
It's a wolf because they want to know who is the leader of the pack. Once again, Tom raises his hand and says, well, that's me.
That's
Clearly.
me, obviously.
Very obviously, that's
I
me.
was able to convince everyone that I am the biggest threat to the Traitors. Therefore, I am the leader of the pack. You need to be picking me again. But I think it came down to, it was basically a 50-50 split between Dylan or Tom.
And the Traitors did mention Dylan's name initially when they were working through their answers, but then they changed their mind and they locked in Tom.
Well, they said Dylan because that was what they thought people's consensus would be. But then they also didn't want the answer to be Dylan because then that looks too obvious. Like it's them. Like it ties back to them. I don't know how it would tie back to them of people thinking, because literally everybody in the house thinks Dylan's the leader. So why would that tie back to individual people? I don't know. And then if you're talking a 50-50 split, it becomes a 50-50 split because Carolyn starts speaking up for Tom. Yeah, Tom, you are a leader.
The only person to back him is Carolyn.
Nobody else is agreeing with Tom. Tom and Carolyn are the only two people who are saying Tom's the leader of the pack. So now Dylan's looking over at Carolyn and is like, that's interesting. And he's making
the clue he was waiting for.
He's making note. So the rest of the group decides, because they do take it to a vote, and unanimously it's decided that Dylan is the leader of the pack, which is wrong. So they lost another $5,000.
I keep saying it keeps getting worse. It's getting significantly worse for Carolyn.
The challenge was so detrimental to Carolyn today.
Dylan's already given her side eye over the last answer. And now the question is, whose voice is the most irrelevant? And we find out that back in the turret, Carolyn said, I want to put my name down.
That's me.
That's
because
me.
I always say that.
And Danielle said, okay.
Good answer. It was like Family Feud when they come down the line. Good answer. You just have to clap it. Good answer. Good answer. Yes, Carolyn. Go ahead and do that. Yep.
Which may be the smartest thing Danielle has done in this game yet.
Most smartest. Get a picture of that.
The most smartest was to let her put her own name down for this question.
Because what it ends up being is Carolyn has to convince everyone else in the group that her voice is irrelevant. So she is speaking up and pushing everybody to the fact because nobody else has assumed that it's her. She has to convince everyone else that it is her because she says it all the time.
And then magically, she is the answer.
That was the right answer.
So 2 out of the 4 questions today pointed towards Carolyn having something to do with determining what the answers were.
And the big problem, too, was that Dolores had said, oh, wow, yeah, you were right about Tom. We should have went with that because, yeah, you were really pushing for that. And Carolyn was like, what? Tom? I never said that Tom was the leader of the pack. When very clearly she had just spoken on that. So now she's doubling back on stuff. It's just adding so much suspicion. By the time we got to that last question, Dylan is all over Carolyn at this point.
They're leaving the challenge, and in the car, he's looking around and he's like, okay, did anyone else think that was weird? He's talking to Tom about how Carolyn responded when Dolores made that observation about the Tom question. They have a problem. Well, Carolyn has a problem. Danielle does not have a problem. Danielle has pure luck on her side.
I mean, it's just, Carolyn is just dismantling this for Danielle.
It's amazing how before the challenge, Danielle seemed to be in a really bad spot. Her name was the most talked about. Leaving this challenge, Carolyn's name is going to be said at the round table.
It's so quick how that can change. And it's amazing because with these challenges, with these questions, Carolyn as a player with that chaos, with that kind of manic energy that comes from that, unsuspecting, unpredictable. That chaos is good in controlled spaces. It's good at the beginning of the game. It's great at the beginning of the game. As you wind down and you get closer and closer to the end, you really need to have a strategy in place.
Well, and this shows why you need the traitors to play together. Because Danielle would have said to her, had they been working together, do not put your name down as the answer.
Don't you dare. Yeah. So I think that is just calling out the fact, too, of traitors not working together makes this a really big problem.
I'm starting to think that the best thing that happened to Boston Rob was getting voted out when he did, because continuing to play the game with either of these traitors would have been terrible.
I feel like
disastrous.
I feel like he could have made it work with Carolyn.
I guess, but she's a loose cannon to just do something unpredictable, like try to sway the group on the answers.
There needed to be a bigger conversation as part of that selection process of saying, here's the strategy for tomorrow.
Don't say shit.
Don't suggest things. I don't care if we go 0 for 4. It's not worth a dime if we can't collect it at the end.
Yeah, and they always give them a very big opportunity in the last challenge to win all the money, pretty much, that they lost throughout the season.
Spoiler alert, but they've done it.
Do any of them watch this show? Because if you didn't win $20,000 today, if you make it towards the end, you're going to have an opportunity to bank a lot of it.
Most likely. You got to watch the show. If you're going to be on the show, at least give one season a watch, just so you have an idea.
What really burned me in all of these side conversations before the round table was fucking Ivar, who again wouldn't be here today if it had been me making decisions in the turret.
Yeah.
He's talking to Tom and Carolyn about Danielle. He is the one who says, I think there's something up with Danielle. I think she's a traitor. I don't trust her.
And Carolyn agrees because, yeah, that is something that aligns with her belief too. So,
and lots of other people in the house who have been having conversations with her all morning.
Multiple people have brought it up. Gabby talked to her about it. Dylan talked to her about it. So yeah, that makes sense and that works out. Of course, Tom isn't convinced because he's all dialed in on Dolores, but don't let that deter you.
Then Ivar goes to Danielle and says, Carolyn has been saying your name. I think it's going to come down to the two of you at the round table.
Ivar, you messy bitch.
Was this strategic?
I don't think so.
Now I'm starting to question, do people think it's Danielle or Carolyn or that it's both of them and they're trying to pin them against each other? I'm not sure that they're all that smart.
That seems like something that would have originated from Tom, but Tom's not on that thought process this episode here. Not today.
He's still thinking about Dolores.
He is all in on Dolores, man, but he was the only person who cared to ask for follow-up between the Carolyn and Danielle standoff that happened at that one round table randomly at the end. That was still ringing alarm bells for a few folks.
Really, no one else's names are being said. It's Danielle, Carolyn, and Dolores.
That was what was, well, Dolores.
Just from Tom.
Yeah, just from Tom. And I think that was what was so rough when Dylan was talking with Carolyn right before the round table, though, was when he was saying, it's going to come down to you or Danielle. And Carolyn was legitimately surprised that her name would be coming up. And Dylan had to kind of walk it back and be like, well, I mean, nobody's said that, but like, it's probably going to come down to you two. If you're bringing up the accusation, that's just how that's going to work.
And she's not picking up on, for some reason, her interpretation of it is that, oh, Danielle's going to come swinging back at me because I'm bringing evidence against her. But she's not realizing that's not why. It's because everyone thought what she did at the competition was suspicious.
There's a lot of additional suspicion that has come to the surface just from the challenge today. And that's reason enough to have you in contention with Danielle, who most of the house seemed to be pretty confident that she is a traitor.
Carolyn's going in a really rough spot, though, because she's aware of the fact that she fucked up in the challenge. She knows she shouldn't have put her name in because nobody else was saying her name. She's realizing that she attracted too much attention. So her headspace maybe isn't as good as Danielle's coming into the round table, who didn't do anything that seemed to alarm anyone today.
But Ivar is the first to speak up.
Of course.
He wants to let us all know that he thinks that there are 2 traitors left and that they're both women.
Yes, that is to our point last week why you needed to slowly pick apart his alliance, because they're not going to let go of the traitors are women.
The Lady Traitors theory is alive and well.
And Carolyn sees an opening, so she starts aggressively coming after Danielle.
Danielle has prepared for this. She knows how to counter this. She's been thinking about this for days because she hasn't been saying Carolyn's name for the past couple of days. So then she builds that into her defense of saying, I've been afraid to even mention Carolyn's name because I thought that I would be murdered if I brought it up. She scared me into silence.
It's pretty clear that Carolyn did not come here with a well thought out defense of herself, nor enough receipts to come after Danielle.
What did she rely on the most in the round table? I remember her saying, people don't listen to her when she speaks. That is what added the most suspicion at the competition today, is it sounds like you answered that question. It sounds like you're a traitor, and it sounds like you're confirming it now. So that is extra suspicious.
She also doesn't say anything, at least that we saw, about the weird competition where Danielle kept putting other people's names up because she seemingly wasn't worried about winning a shield, or the very dramatic responses at breakfast and the crying and the shaking and a lot of the community theater that's been going on.
Is that Carolyn's way of respecting Danielle's game on the way out? It doesn't seem like this was Carolyn fighting for her life in this roundtable, even though she knew she was up on the line here. Like, this could be it very well.
Yeah, but I think that she was pretty sure that other people were suspicious of Danielle. So I don't know if she put the time into coming up with a very clear, thought out argument, because people were already leaning that direction.
I feel like she forgets a lot of stuff too.
Well, that's a problem.
And especially when she's forgiving or pretending to forgive, then she actually does forget. And it's like, you can't do that in this game.
The thing she's most upset about and keeps bringing up is that Danielle lied. I've never lied. I've been a faithful. Faithfuls have no reason to lie. And Danielle lied. And everyone's like, hold on, can you remind us what she lied about? Because they don't even remember from the last time that this back and forth occurred at the table. And it's because Danielle said that Carolyn threw out Brittany's name. And we know that is, on a technicality, true because she said Brittany's name in the turret.
I was thinking about how I would flip this on Danielle, because you have to catch her in a shock moment. You have to get an emotional reaction out of Danielle. And I would have, if I were Carolyn, said something about, I never said Brittany's name, and let Danielle keep doubling down on the fact that I said Brittany's name. And then I would say, you know what, Danielle, I think I said, oh my gosh, I'm worried that Brittany might get murdered. So maybe you confused it when you were discussing murder in the turret one night or something like that, along those lines.
Or make her tell the story.
Throw something in. Yeah, what was that?
When did I tell you?
What was that conversation
about
like?
Brittany? Because you know she's lying about something that happened in the turret, and she
Word
can't
for
say
word.
that.
Can you tell me word for word what was said and where we were and when that was said?
Because she's going to get flustered.
She will not be able to pin it down. She's going to try to come up with something on the spot, and she's not going to be able to do that.
She should have tried that. Also, it's unfortunate that we didn't get ahead of the acting that's taking place, because that's what Danielle comes for Carolyn about. That Carolyn has been putting on an act with the way that she's been walking around the castle looking shocked and confused all of the time.
Takes one to know one.
That this is her Columbo theory.
And then what would Danielle's be? Meryl Streep? I mean,
it's not that good.
It's not that good, guys.
And here's where Silent Assassin comes back. That's what Danielle accuses Carolyn of being. She's walking around here, putting on an act. All of you think that she's not capable of being a traitor. And in the meantime, she's been a silent assassin, eliminating you one by one.
She's been pulling these Mr. Magoo murders that are just Final Destination level, accidental, intentional murders.
And that's all the conversation that takes place. So it's looking pretty worrisome.
When it's coming down to the vote, I was worried. I figured that Dylan's mindset for the vote was that he has to be pretty sure that Danielle is a traitor, even just based on this exchange and the conversation that's happening at the round table, the defense that's given, the accusations that are flying around. So he is going to try to learn something new by voting for Carolyn. Because if he votes Carolyn out and she was a faithful, he'll know absolutely that Danielle was a traitor.
Yeah, I agree. They're this far through the game. If you are 90% sure somebody's a traitor, don't get rid of them.
They probably
especially
are.
if they've been protecting you.
Yes.
Why would you get that person out?
Well, and I think that's why Dylan was afraid to vote for Carolyn, because he feels like Carolyn was the one who's been protecting him.
Oh, I thought he thinks that Danielle is the one protecting
Really?
him.
Well, I mean, I think that
Well, now he probably thinks it's both of
that's
them.
why you made it this far, Guy. Yeah, is because both of them were protecting you. Both of them you are in good standing with. So that makes the most sense.
The vote starts. Tom and Dolores vote for each other yet again, so we can throw their votes out.
That feels like traitorish behavior just in and of itself. So I don't know why we haven't landed on that yet. Is that everybody's just letting them go after each other individually for this long?
They're wasting their votes every week.
I would have to get suspicious of that eventually, right?
This is such an important round table
To vote,
to just decide to vote for one another.
that is just ridiculous.
Carolyn and Gabby vote for Danielle. It's kind of Carolyn's alliance. I don't really know how many other friends she has that are super close, because that's part of the challenge of coming for Danielle at the round table, is Danielle has forged good relationships with pretty much everyone in the house.
Obviously, Danielle and Brittany vote for Carolyn.
And then freaking Ivar,
Ivar voted for Carolyn.
who wouldn't be here this week if it had been up to me.
Who do you think Sam would have voted for?
I can't move into the mind of Sam.
Try. Drape a snake over your shoulders and try.
I think he would have voted for Carolyn.
I think he would have too.
Yeah.
I think that the game, seeing the answers and analyzing the answers, I feel like Sam would have been all over Carolyn too with
Yeah.
Dylan, because Dylan votes for Carolyn as well.
Yeah, he's the deciding vote.
He
And
had the chance. He could have split it, which then that could have been interesting, because then we would have had to do a revote, and then Tom and Dolores would have had to vote for either Danielle or Carolyn.
or someone else could change their vote too.
Or someone else could change, yes.
That would have been fun.
But I'm just saying, like, usually on the revote, they have to vote for one of those two people. So then
Yeah.
that's where Tom and Dolores, they would have to vote for one of them.
I would have liked to have seen that happen, because watching Danielle take Carolyn out was one of the most dissatisfying episodes of this show that I have ever watched in the history of it.
Very disappointing. But I can't fault much of that on Danielle's doing. It was a lot of
bad gameplay
it
on
was
Carolyn's part.
Carolyn's undoing. It wasn't Danielle's doing. Because that's what multiple people say. When Carolyn gets up there and admits that she's a traitor, I had no suspicion of Carolyn up until today.
Which sucks.
That is just brutal to get that far and then have it all come apart at the seams here.
They also give her a round of applause because they are so impressed at how she played as a traitor, which I don't think will be the reaction that Danielle gets.
No, not at all. Well, I think most people just know that she's a traitor at this point, because even Gabby is onto it, where she was picking up on a little bit of a vibe. It felt like the Boston Rob, Bob the Drag Queen, traitor after traitor sort of debate that was going on in there. So maybe Danielle's a traitor too, and we just watched a traitor turn on a traitor.
She says that to Tom and Brittany, and their brains light up. All of a sudden, dots are connecting for Brittany. Maybe Danielle has been protecting me, and that's why I'm still here. And Tom is probably thinking,
How is Dolores involved?
exactly.
How did we get here?
So then the last two traitors are Danielle and Dolores, D and D. It's the two of the double Ds. They're the traitors. That's what he's thinking.
That has to be it.
Did you see Danielle's performance, though, once they voted Carolyn out? And like you said, this was totally Carolyn's own poor delivery at the challenge that got herself voted out. But Danielle is acting as though she just had the most frightening experience of her life, going head to head with a traitor and voting one out. And
I told you guys. I told you.
She drops to the floor. She's pretending to shake. Her eyes are huge. It's the worst performance that I've seen at the round table.
I would vote her out the next day in a heartbeat.
I'm convinced that she thinks that she is doing so well that everybody is fooled.
Yeah.
And now everyone is like, all right, we got Carolyn gone. Danielle is definitely the other one, which makes sense that that's why they were coming after each other so hard.
That's making sense. But now Danielle is faced with a difficult decision. As the only traitor remaining in the game, she now has the opportunity to recruit. It's the last chance for a traitor to recruit.
And this one sucks.
This is rough because this is an ultimatum recruitment, which means she has to pick someone, offer for them to be a traitor. And if they say no, then they're the one who's murdered. So that makes it very difficult because if you pick someone who you trust and they say no, then you murdered somebody who you're close to in the game.
No one is shocked when Danielle jumps for joy knowing she's going to be able to do this because she's going to pick Brittany. She wanted to pick Brittany last week. She's definitely picking her now.
So she goes through that, and Brittany's reaction, because when she first walks in and sees the note on the chair, she's assuming she's been murdered. But instead, it's a note that says, "Go meet in the dungeon. Your presence is requested for a secret meeting." Her thought is, what if Danielle's a traitor? And if she is, why the fuck would she recruit me at this point? That would be so dumb, wouldn't it? Yeah, Brittany, it would. That's who you've aligned with in this game. Somebody who has no idea what they're doing and is just bumbling their way to the final.
I am so excited for next week when we get to see Danielle take the traitor hood down and Brittany will see who it is who has recruited her because she's not going to be shocked at all.
Can you imagine being in Brittany's shoes when you see Danielle standing in front of you and saying, "Join me," at this point in the game when there's so much sus on Brittany and so much sus on Danielle? Why on earth would you do that? Why?
Well, it's because Danielle thinks that she is playing the best game of the Traitors that has ever been played and that they're going to just slide into the finals and split the money together.
No, you know what it is? It's Danielle feels guilty that she's been lying to Brittany, and so she wants to get Brittany on her side, so then that way she's not really lying anymore.
She's playing the game way too emotionally.
She's playing the game emotionally and with a conscience, too much of a conscience, of not realizing that this is just a game, and that, yes, you need a faithful who believes that you are a faithful at the end to win as a traitor.
I'm concerned for Brittany because I have been listening to a lot of the podcast interviews that she's been doing, and she doesn't talk very positively about Danielle or the way Danielle is playing the game.
Because this is one of those moments where if I were being recruited, a possibility of being recruited in this scenario, I think at that point I would say, just fucking murder me, because I don't want to be here to get thrown under the bus.
My hope is that Brittany is smart enough to see that Danielle is the next one who's about to be banished, and that she's able to lay low her first week as a traitor and let Danielle get voted out, and that she goes to the final and maybe wins the money herself. But I don't think anyone trusts her enough to go to the final with her because her name has been said at the round table a number of times.
Yeah, and now you have to consider the voting block that has formed too, because then you have the guys who still think that there were two women traitors. They've banished Carolyn, so there's one woman traitor left. Is that Danielle's way of getting the sus off of her? Is by recruiting?
But it doesn't seem that that's her motive because she wants to go to the end with Brittany.
That's what she keeps saying, but I don't know if that's true. So if that's the play,
be shitty if all
that's
of a sudden
the play,
she turns on her.
And honestly, that's the only way that I would respect Danielle as a traitor. That's the only way that she'll be able to redeem herself as a traitor for this season, is if you recruit Brittany and then immediately throw her under the bus.
To get yourself into the finals?
To get yourself into the final, because that'll remove suspicion. That would be a traitor move.
Well, time will tell if Brittany accepts and if she's a good traitor. This happened to Kate. Wasn't very good for Kate. She didn't do very well. She ended up being abandoned at the end once Phaedra got voted out, and she was the only traitor left in the game, and she'd been playing as a traitor for like 24 hours.
Well, and Phaedra was not the mastermind. She recruited Kate, and then they went up to the turret, and Phaedra was like, okay.
They just stared at each
other. So what
other.
do we do? And Kate was like, what do you mean, what do we do? That's probably how the conversation would go, because if Brittany says yes to recruitment, then her and Danielle will have to decide who to murder. And that's probably how that conversation is going to go. Or they'll just agree on Gabby. That'd be a big problem.
No. You know, who are you rooting for now? Carolyn, for sure, was who I was ready to see win over Danielle.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's still being excited about seeing a traitor win. Now, I don't know that I care at all about the traitor portion of this.
I want Dylan to catch people, and I want him to have those turns where he is not willing to finish the game with people that he used to trust and now does not trust. So I'm waiting for that to be a redemption point for Dylan, because he's made some really dumb decisions and he's aligned with some people and bought in on things that did not make sense and that were definitely detrimental, but it got him this far. So hopefully he's learned from those lessons and he's able to take that into the final. If we're talking traitors, if Brittany would be able to flip it on Danielle, like you said, just come in under the radar, have Danielle get banished, and then she's able, but I don't think they're going to be able to get out of that. There was a lot of suspicion for 2 roundtables in a row on Brittany. That's really hard to avoid.
No, and she's hanging out with Danielle so much.
It's way too, you're way too close now.
People are going to say, well, if Danielle's a traitor, then Brittany's probably a traitor.
Probably. It just adds more suspicion. You have aligned that too close, and it's too much of a read. My dream final would just be Tom and Dolores standing at the end, and still Tom asking if he could vote Dolores out, but no.
Even though they've already won the money?
No, there's, well, that, or you can't vote anybody else out when there's only 2 people left, Tom. You can't do that.
They're going to tell them they're faithfuls, and he's not going to believe it.
I had no idea this whole time.
He's going to find out that he was playing as a faithful.
He was a faithful the whole time. Amazing.
Few quick announcements before we go. We are recapping Love is Blind Season 8 right here on Surviving Reality. Those episodes are dropping every Tuesday, so you have some time to catch up on what's been going on in the pods.
No more pods, please.
Yeah, please. Are we over the pod? There were 6 episodes in the pods this season.
6 pod episodes, and they were bad.
Still recovering.
So the new episodes, you can check those out. Oh, we can watch those today if you're listening on the Patreon, because if you're listening to this episode, you get it a day early and ad-free.
We've also got another podcast called Surviving Sister Wives, where we are currently working our way through what we are calling a rehash while they're on a mid-season break, which means we do a little bit of gardening and we watch some classic episodes of Sister Wives.
It was Carly's first foray into the edible domain.
It went well.
It was good. We'll try again.
And we're getting to the end of the Traitors here. Somehow it feels like it's quickly approaching, which is making me sad, but I am excited because that means we will be starting Gypsy Rose Life After Lockup Season 2 once this comes to an end here.
So those episodes start airing on March 10th, so we'll probably be dropping those on Wednesdays.
But stay tuned, there'll be more to come, and we still have more episodes of The Traitors to go. Thanks for listening. See you next time.